What's up, everybody? It's Goddess Z, and I'm here with another podcast episode on Holistic and Spiritual AF. Welcome, welcome, welcome back, fam. If you're coming back, I know you're not going to believe it, but we have hit 2,000 downloads like over the weekend. I am so proud of that. And thank each and every one of you for downloading these on the different respective platforms, for sharing them out, for commenting. This podcast is available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and pretty much anywhere that podcasts are syndicated. And we talk about all sorts of things such as ancestral wisdom, healing, metaphysics, how to activate your divine feminine code. So if this is your first time hopping on this podcast, be sure to stick around all the way to the end if you're into those topics that have to do with the mind, body, spirit integration, because that's what we talk about over here. I always say that every podcast episode. If either one of those things are out of balance, then we are out of balance. And it's so true. Okay. So be sure to stick around all the way to the end because today's podcast episode is going to be me coming in solo with episode 61. Wow. Like this is just like growing so fast. And I'm so grateful for that. And today's title is From Sirius to the Soil, the Science of Ancestral Power. Okay. And of course, we're taking this from an Afro Indigenous perspective because I'm all about the ancestors and I'm all about, being able to reclaim and remember what's inside of our DNA and our bloodline. So, we're going to be talking about what if science and spirituality were never separate. In this episode, we're going to explore the bridge between cosmic intelligence and ancestral earth wisdom, from the Dogon Tribe's connection to Sirius A and B to the ancient technologies of Kemet and the Atlanteans, all the way down to the earth mounds and sacred landscapes that hum with ancestral memory. Discover how your bloodline is a living technology, one that remembers the stars, the soul, and the sound of creation itself. We're talking energy, frequency, DNA, and ritual, how quantum science echoes what Afro-Indigenous cosmology have always known. Okay, so we're going deep in on this one. And this one is going to be so deep because there's a lot going on in this. And I actually decided to have the next class based on this. So the next master class is going to be on Wednesday, November the 19th at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I will have that information down in the description, as well as how you can find me on social media and my website to check out the spiritual consultations, books, classes, all that good stuff, and social media as well. Okay. So without further ado, let's jump into it. So today is going to kind of just be like a precursor into the actual class itself, but we're still going to cover a lot of meat. You know how I do. Okay. Anybody that knows me knows that you're going to end up coming out of here with some like some pretty good knowledge. Okay. So we're talking about From Sirius to the Soul, the Science of Ancestral Power. And the reason I decided to do this episode is because I was actually inspired by my own TikTok video that I did, and I was talking about I came across something, and the lady was saying that science is logical spirituality. So that's what kind of got me to listen to her a little bit more. And it was almost as if she was implying that spirituality wasn't logical, when in actuality, spirituality is very logical as well. It just has to be experienced and it has to be embodied. And so that kind of what is what my video was about. And I was actually talking about like the difference, the similarities, like how there may be some differences and you may start out on one end of the spectrum, but at the end of the day, you're going to come in the middle somewhere. Okay. So if you start out on spirituality, you're going to go through a lot of shadow work, you're going to go through a lot of healing, and then you're going to tap into the cosmic side and metaphysical side of things, going from your bloodline ancestors into your cosmic ancestors. And if you start on the quantum side and you start to do those things and raise your frequency, you're going to only be able to go so far before you get right back to the middle, where you have to get those things that are blocking you in this lifetime from elevating to that frequency. So that's what I meant by they both meet in the center, and you need them both. So yeah, so I was like, you know what, this is loaded. I was trying to do that in 3 minutes, and it was like, my ancestors was like, listen, this is a great class. Go for it. And then I was like, it's also a great podcast episode too for people who may be feeling called to something different. Like everything that I do, and these podcast episodes and classes and videos and everything is to help to activate codes and the ones that are meant to receive it, the information. So that's the only reason and my only purpose for doing that, because that is a big part of my purpose, and helping the ones that are ready to activate. And I remember when I started my journey, I'm grateful that there are teachers along the way and classes and places to go, but honey, it was not as widespread, particularly people that look like me in the beginning, where I could go and get access to this information on YouTube. And we definitely didn't have all the social media that we have now today. We did, but it wasn't so open and so liberal like it is today. So that's why I do what I do, and I have tons of other podcast episodes that have guests on as well. They come in on the first and the third Friday of the month at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and they drop their wisdom and different applicable tools and ways that we can actually start to balance that mind, body, spirit. So today I want to go into the science. And when I say science, like I said earlier, I'm always talking about from an Afro-Indigenous perspective, because there is a difference. And there's a difference between science from an indigenous perspective versus a Western science terminology. So those two actually really get confused. And a lot of times people don't even know what they're saying. And we have to remember that anytime we're dealing with the English language, I don't care what the word is, there is some deception and there is some trickery in the things that we say. So you're saying one thing, thinking that it means something based on what it should mean, but in actuality, it has some sort of other etymology or is connected to some sort of Latin term that actually speaks spells, because our words are powerful a lot of times. So that's why I always take things back to an ancestral indigenous perspective. Now, granted, we have to use the English language because that's the language that most of us speak over here, and a lot of us don't know other languages. So we got to make the best do what we can. And that's why it's important to tap into our ancestral DNA, because a lot of times we start getting out of the English language and we start going into our energy language, our energy body. So telepathy and intuition and these things that would be explained logically as science, but are innately embodied, felt, and experienced on the spiritual side, which are what things were before there were any terms for it, before there were English words for it. Just think about that. And so that's what we're talking about. So science from an Afro-Indigenous perspective, this is going to be an approach that views all reality as interconnected and animated by spiritual energy. Okay, the spiritual realm is not a separate sphere, but it's linked to the physical world through a reciprocal relationship with spirit and energy. So, healing, for example, is not only a physical process, but it also restores harmony between the individual, their community, their family, and the spiritual realm. And so, that's how we get into when we heal ourselves, then we're actually helping to heal our bloodline that came before us, as well as the generations that come after us. Okay. So, us doing our own healing work has these abilities to reach across timelines. Okay. That in itself is metaphysical. That in itself is scientific. And so I think what happens a lot of times is people want to skip the work. That's all there is to it. People want to skip the work. They want to ease themselves from the pain. And I get that uncomfortable feeling, that unsureness, not knowing what's going to happen next, if I'm doing it right. They want to kind of skip that process of shadow work and they want to jump into the look, I have arrived. I'm so conscious. I'm so elevated. Look at me, get on my level, and the bottom line is, like I shared in one of those videos, was your ass wouldn't be here on earth if your soul didn't have lessons to learn and master. And if you had learned and mastered all of your lessons for this lifetime, then your ass would be about to transition up out of here. Okay. So the reason we're here is so that we can master these lessons and we can elevate and transcend and transform in a way that helps our soul level, helps our ancestors before us and after us. Okay, so there's no cheat codes. I hate to break it to you again, and even even when I have my podcast guests on here, at least once out of the episode, somebody's going to say, you can't get around the work. You got to do the work. And that's coming from people who have done the work. Okay. Anybody that's telling you something different, they haven't done the work. They just read a book somewhere, they found a cheat code, and they think that they're getting out of the work. But the bottom line is you will be faced with yourself, because that is a big part of the reason that souls are here on earth. So that's coming from science, coming from an Afro-Indigenous perspective, which we don't even really call it science. You know what I'm saying? We just have to, some people understand it better that way. So Western science, which is going to be this stuff over here, not even talking about Eastern medicine, which they don't even call it science either, because it's more on the spirit approach and energy side of things. But Western science is going to be a Western methodology, traditionally separating humans from nature. Okay, so we got a big problem right there. Well, you've disconnected the humans from nature as if they're not interconnected with all there is in nature, and it prioritized a reductionist objective analysis of individual components. Okay, it relies on empirical evidence and skepticism, often dismissing spiritual or metaphysical knowledge as unprovable or magical thinking, right? So these are people who are trying to figure stuff out without going through the experience. And that's exactly what I just described. That's, I'm going to master all my lessons without going through the lessons. Okay. I am going to kind of cheat my way into being able to astrally project and do these different things that they may have some access to, but they really are not ascending on a soul level in that manner. And so, because they can't experience or can't explain what it's like to have a dream and wake up and just know, or walk into a room and have a sensation about, I shouldn't be here, then they say, well, we can't prove that. So, that's not of any importance and that there's no validity to it. And so, as you can see, Western, and this is why I go from an Afro Indigenous perspective, Western science completely disconnects us from everything. Okay, literally, it literally pulls us away and puts us in a position to say that we can figure out ancient understandings and cosmic understandings on our own. And my experience has been, and most people who are listening to this podcast episode has been, they realize that there is something bigger and greater than them, and they're connected to it, and they also recognize that there's many different dimensions and realms, including places where our ancestors are, and they're assisting us and guiding us based on our level of understanding. So that's where we're coming from when I'm talking about science. So, like I said, Western world is calling it science. Afro-Indigenous perspective did not call it science. Okay, it just was the way of being. Now, I want to jump into some different types of cultures that were actually embodying, living, and doing some amazing things when it comes to the cosmic metaphysical side of things. Way before there was a such word as science, okay? So, for anybody that thinks like, once again, this is, spirituality and connecting with your ancestors is so small. I'm about to school you right now. As for some people, this may be the first time that they've ever heard this. For some people, this may be a reclamation, a remembrance, and we're definitely going to dive deeper into this on the class next month. So be sure to check that out in the link in the bio. So we're going to start out with the Dogon tribe. And the Dogon tribe is an indigenous tribe out of West Africa. It's the people of Mali, and they're known for their sophisticated cosmology and astronomical knowledge that predates modern science. Okay, so there you go. We got to take that science word and throw it right on out the damn window, because the word science came after what it is that they were able to accomplish. Okay, and these were very tribal people. Okay, they were not highly technologically savvy, they weren't sitting around a whole bunch of computers and technology, but they were in tune to very high astrological technology, okay? Very sophisticated cosmology. So this was the Dogon tribe. I was thinking to myself, I wish I had some pictures, but I will definitely show some inside of the class. Their sacred stories tell us about beings called the Nomo. They were amphibious, Lord, water linked, and celestial teachers who descended from Sirius star systems. All right, so they are going way, way back, way back. Anytime you're talking about amphibious, water linked, celestial teachers, these are going to be beings coming out of the ancestral womb. Okay, so they're talking about the star system Sirius A and B. And it's been said that in Western science, they don't even really notice Sirius B until many, many years later, and fairly recently. Okay. So, this indigenous tribe of the Dogon people from Mali and Africa, they had these relationships with these other beings, and they told these serious stories and all of this stuff. So, like I said, Sirius is a star system that contains two stars, Sirius A, which is visible, and Sirius B, which is a dense white dwarf. Okay. The Dogon described it as the pole Talo as a tiny, heavy star that takes about 50 years to orbit around Sirius A, centuries before Western astronomers confirmed this in 1862. So they didn't just track the sky, okay? They weren't just up there looking at telescopes and trying to see the star systems. They actually had relationships with these beings from the star systems. Now, that's an amazing concept in itself because we can't say that. Like, we're supposed to be so high advanced and so technologically savvy that and so connected to everything around the world, but I haven't heard any stories or come across anybody saying that they've had relationships with beings from those star systems. And the reason why is because these people were so interconnected with nature and everything around them, which means that they were not only connected with the roots of the soil and the earth and the rivers and the oceans, but they were also connected with the wind, the air, the stars, the cosmos, and even the planets. So their consciousness had to be so highly elevated that these beings trusted them, that they could come down here and they wasn't going to hurt them or try to do, some scientific experiment on them. And this was able to be confirmed back in 1862. Okay, now that's just hitting it out the gate. That's super high science right there. Okay, so the Dogon tribe was like very tribal, and they were rocking it out with beings from Sirius A and B. Okay, so they didn't separate science, okay, tracking the heavens from spirituality or ceremony and myth and ritual. The two fed into each other. It just was, okay, a result of what they were doing and how they were living on the planet energetically, who they were, what they embodied, the rituals that they practiced, the reverence that they had for the earth and for nature, and then their ability to also interact with these beings from other planets. They didn't say, "Oh my God, we're doing science over here and let's quantum leap into that." No, it interconnected, So they were doing things that we would describe today in English language as metaphysics, science, quantum leaping experiences, and things like that, and also doing things that we would consider as spirituality, but for them it was a way of life. Okay. So that was one example, and that was like one of the oldest as well. We're going to actually go in chronological order with this. So they were rocking out with sky literacy and star ancestry. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the Atlanteans. All right, this one right here is pretty dope too because this you see a lot of on social media, and I appreciate the videos that people have come out to kind of give us a visual reference of what the Atlanteans may have looked like and what Atlantis looked like. But these were considered the energy of visionary mystics. They were frequency keepers. Okay, Atlantis is described by Plato as a civilization of great power and advanced knowledge, often interpreted as allegory of a spiritual fall. So a lot of the esoteric traditions that came out of here, especially in African, Egyptian, and Lemurian mystery schools, treat Atlantis as a memory of time when humans lived in higher frequency and unity consciousness. Okay, so clearly we're not there now, and we know why. As long as we got people like Sexy Red running around here and Diddy and shit, we'd have got way off of that. Okay, and not to laugh and make fun of it, but this is the kind of stuff, me being a seeker, that makes me say, well, how the hell did we get from that to this? Because these sorts of experiences and times of existence, they fascinate me, but the cool thing about it is that now we're in the age of Aquarius. Okay, so like I'm kind of answering the question like skipped ahead. So now we're in the age of Aquarius, which the veil is being lifted for a lot of people. We've talked about that a lot. And also, more people are being called to something deeper. They're tapping more into their spiritual self, and they're feeling like there's got to be more. More people are leaving the church than ever in history. A lot of people deconstructing Christianity and the programming that had on them. You even have people questioning the patriarchal construct. The divine feminine are rising and activating their codes. I mean, the whole planet is going through an entire reset. And if you look at it, it's going into the direction of higher consciousness. And there's a reason for that. And a lot of that has to do with what I just talked about. We talked about the Dogon Tribe, who clearly had to be like super, super high conscious to have these beings just interacting with them all the time, like they trusted them. And then we're talking about the Atlanteans. And the Atlanteans, like I said, these were a highly advanced civilization, okay? And so we came from that. A lot of us came from that, and we are the descendants of that. So without getting too much further into the podcast episode, I'm going to go ahead and talk about the Atlanteans a little bit. So let's see. Some of the things that they were known for was their crystalline technology. Okay, Atlanteans work with sound, color, light, and crystals as energy conductors, like tuning frequencies to heal, store data, or communicate telepathically. My throat chakra closed today. Okay, energy grids. They align temples with the Earth's ley lines, the same global energetic network that also links the Great Pyramids, Stonehenge, and the Mayan temples. I mean, I'm just going to stop right there because we're not doing stuff like that today. We're so caught up in a Western society colonized way of thinking, which is go to work, go get something to eat, go have fun, be distracted, that nobody's thinking about the conscious ideas of everything having some sort of conscious connection to everything. That when you build something, you're going to build it on a grid line so that it taps into the Earth's power centers that's connected to Sirius. Okay. So they were so highly advanced with their technology. These are things that they were doing. And then, of course, their crystalline technology, not only were they using crystals, which a lot of people you see using crystals for that reason as a form of energy conducting, but they also use sound, light, and color. Those are also forms of energy and frequencies as well that hold data. And of course, they were able to communicate telepathically. And I love that. Imagine if we could do that. It'd be a real quiet ass Earth. It'd be a quiet Earth, but people would be saying all kinds of stuff. It'd be very interesting. So we talked about the energy grids. Let's see. They also had a very high moral science. They believed power, aka science, must serve the divine order, spirit. And I love that. So when ego interrupted that, the balance, the civilization fell. All right. So once people started getting into me, I, is when this civilization fell. But everything that I just described there was interconnected. It was power. It was energy. It was grid lines. It was signs, sound, lights, crystals. But then at the same time, it was, hey, if this stuff doesn't serve spirit and the divine order, then we ain't doing it. Okay, so at the end of the day, yes, there may have been what some people considered as science, which just actually was science to serve a higher consciousness, a higher existence, a higher spiritual living. Okay, and that's the Atlanteans. All right, a lot of times spirituality just isn't talked about enough. I think that people just don't think it's cool enough when really it's the original science, high technology. You just have to tap into it. So we talked about the Dogon Tribe, we talked about the Atlanteans. Now I want to talk a little bit about ancient Earth tech. All right, pyramids, mounds, canyons, all over the place. So pyramids can be found across the planet in Egypt, Sudan, Mexico, China, Indonesia, all of these indigenous places, showing a global resonance of sacred geometry. All right, so even the damn geometry was sacred. Everything was sacred. There was nothing that was done just for the fuck of doing it. So these can be found all over the earth and all over the planet. And if you notice, anytime you find them around the planet, they're found in indigenous regions. All right. And that's why I do a lot of the work that I do for Afro-Indigenous people or indigenous people. Each pyramid encodes mathematical perfection, aligning to the stars like Sirius or Orion's belt. All right. So we're talking mathematics here. We're talking about sound. We're talking about Grid lines, we're talking about ancient technology, all right, which would be considered as science for some people. The Great Pyramid of Giza is aligned along the cardinal directions of 1/15 of a degree and contains the same ratio as the Earth's curvature. Like, these types of things are such advanced technology. It makes you wonder, well, how in the world did they know that without having a telescope or some new sort of equipment that was created today where they can't even figure that stuff out? And this was being done hundreds of thousands of years before the word science ever even existed, okay? So, in Afro Indigenous cosmology, the pyramids are more than tombs. They're frequency amplifiers. They're connecting earth and sky, and they are stone antennas for consciousness. How about that? You know, these are antennas connecting with what? Your antennas with inside of your DNA. We finna get to that in a little bit. All right. I also wanted to talk about the mounds because the mounds are in a lot of them are in North America. So, the indigenous mound cultures, especially in the Mississippian, Andina and Hopewell built massive earthen structures aligned with solstices and star positions. Okay, so even over here, our Afro-American indigenous, um, we still was rocking it out with sacred geometry as well. These mounds served as ceremonial centers for renewal, birth, and burial, just like pyramids in Kemet. Okay, so it's also important to know that, like I just said, these pyramids and this earth tech was all over. It wasn't just in Africa, it wasn't just in Kemet, and it was just all over. I even said in China and Indonesia, you know. So the indigenous people of the earth were all attuned to a higher level of consciousness at a certain point. Let's see, the Serpent Mound in Ohio aligns with lunar cycles, showing deep astronomical understanding. So, that's a big part of the reason why I want to do a lot of traveling around the United States. Traveling outside of the country is cool too, don't get me wrong, because there's grid lines everywhere, but there's so much that once you start tapping into the sacred geometry of the earth and how magnificent our own history of indigenous people was right on over here, you can keep yourself busy right in these 50 states that they drew a line on a map on, that has nothing to do. And that's another thing I'm thinking about. Our ancestors were so brilliant that they were able to uh, build mounds and pyramids on certain grid lines without a damn map, okay? And meanwhile, we decide to take a mass of land and split it up into 50 states with some lines going across the paper that don't have nothing to do with nothing. Like, how did we get from there to here, okay? And a lot of it was already kind of pretty much answered in the Atlanteans is like when ego got involved, when we stopped serving spirit and we start serving things and capitalism and serving one person, and one person has to be the king and all of that stuff. There's a lot of different components and moving parts that got us there. So let's see, the Grand Canyon and sacred landscapes. Indigenous tribes like the Hopi hold that the Grand Canyon is part of their creation story, the place of emergence from the lower worlds. Some legends speak of underground temple structures and of ancient beings. Spiritually speaking, these can be seen as memory nodes, energetic portals that hold frequency information of ancient Earth. Okay. Now, there's a reason that a good portion of the Grand Canyon you just can't go gallivanting and going to check it out and being a tourist of, and it's actually protected by the military. Okay, kind of makes you wonder, kind of like that hole over in Antarctica. Okay, so there's a lot of um, evidence on the planet, all over the planet. Okay. So no matter where you're listening from to this podcast, if you start to do a little bit of research in your area and vicinity, I guarantee you can find something that's fairly close to you to be able to go check out yourself, and even just being able to step across these places or walk near these places, then you would be able to have some experiences and connect with the ancient remembrance of the earth, of the grid lines, of what may lay in your DNA. That's another reason that it's a really great opportunity to connect with your ancestors because they will tell you to go places. And like I said, I have such a relationship with my ancestors now. When they tell me to go somewhere, I'm like, okay, you know, not quite sure why we're going over there, but then I go and I have this experience, kind of like I had last week. It was really interesting. So yeah, so connecting with our ancestors through visiting some of these sacred places also is a way to activate your DNA. Okay. So when you walk on, I just said that when you walk on sacred land, your DNA is going to hum. These stones remember you. It's an amazing experience that you don't want to miss out. So I'm also going to go into the bloodline, Sirius energy, and spiritual DNA, and how all of that actually ties into your bloodline ancestors. Okay. Why I always say connect with your bloodline ancestors first. They're going to help you to heal that trauma. They're going to help you to be able to attune your energy body so that you can hear things. You're going to learn practices and start doing things that's going to help you to heal as well your energy body. And there's a reason for that. There's a reason because a lot of us carry this in our DNA. You never know. You trace things back far enough, or maybe not be able to trace it far back to the Dogon Tribe. But the bottom line is it's still in your DNA. Okay, so you have some sort of ancient technology inside of you that could possibly be being activated. So the Sirius bloodline, many African cosmologies, including Kemet and the Dogon, trace ancestral or spiritual lineage to the star Sirius, the brightest star in the sky. And some people may ask, and I already know this question is coming. Make sure y'all drop y'all questions in the comment section. I forgot. But I'm sure somebody's going to ask me, well, how do you know if you're from Sirius? By the time you make it to that point of um, cosmic understanding, you will just know. Okay, you're going to have some sort of something is going to be told to you, activated, resonate within you, a remembrance in you that I can't even describe to you. Okay, you just kind of have to go down the journey and the path, and you will just without a doubt know. I know for myself exactly who I am, where I came from, and what my purpose is. And what was so dope about that, and I literally just found this out. Like, I know a little bit, as much as I can, about my bloodline ancestry on my mom and my dad's side, but my cosmic family, I never really knew. And I just found this out like in, I want to say June of this year. It was amazing, because with the veil being lifted and things being activated, I went through an intense like shadow work, recalibration, attunement, and all of this information started coming to me. And when it started coming to me, it was so dope. And the only way I can describe it is once I started being revealed to myself as my star self, all of everything that I went through, all of the character traits, the attributes, the my healing, my energy stuff, all of this different stuff that came out was like, oh my God, that's why I'm the way that I am. That's why I went through this. Yep, that's me. And I was being true to my soul returned here from a star system. So it's really hard to describe. All I can say is just start tapping into your bloodline ancestry, start working on yourself, and more things will be revealed to you. I can't say how long it's going to take for somebody. All I can say is at some point you will have the information that you need. And certain things, when you're listening to people, myself included, research this stuff. Don't just believe what I say. Be the seeker. I always talk about that. Look this stuff up for yourself. And a lot of times your ancestors will work with you that way too. Once you start seeking, they'll, put things in front of you. You'll be led to the right books and classes and videos and things like that that resonate with you. Pay attention with how it actually resonates with you and aligns with your soul. Okay, that's why I always say tap into that inner realm of yourself, because that's going to be your compass. That's going to be your guide. That's going to let you know whether or not something's on or off. Because I can hear some things and I'm like, yeah, that ain't got nothing to do with me. It's not necessarily it's a bad thing. It's just that that's not, I can't resonate with that. And then there's some things that people may say and they explain, and I can resonate with that, but it's still not for me. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, okay, yep, that makes sense. That may be their understanding of it. And then there's some stuff that's just, like I said, completely off, and like somebody doesn't know what they're talking about. It, you could tell that somebody's trying to learn their way into embodiment. And, it is what it is. That's like a protection mechanism for me to know. Um, just because a person has the knowledge doesn't mean that they're applying the knowledge. And also sometimes people can have knowledge that they're not meant to have, like you learning things that don't have anything to do with your lineage, and now you claiming that, you know what I'm saying? And that could be completely against what it is that is actually in your bloodline and what star system you came from. So Definitely connect with your bloodline ancestors. They're going to take you on the journey. And like I said in the last podcast episode, is that with the veil being lifted, it doesn't have to take that long. That's what I love for you guys. Because for me, like I said, it took me right on up to elder training. But you know what? I'm grateful to be here on the other side. And like I said, knowing what I know and found out in June, oh, it just gave me so much clarity because I was like, oh, it explained everything. Like my life had to happen this way. It couldn't have happened any other way. And I'm grateful for it because my ancestors led me through the whole thing. So some people may be carrying serious bloodlines. Some people may be carrying cosmic codes, from other star systems as well. Your body is an ancient technology. Your DNA is an antenna for cosmic memory. That's what I just talked about. Think about how our ancestors lived, our cosmic ancestors, our ancient ones lived. Not necessarily the ones so recent, because a lot of them were caught up in the same damn struggle we in. Okay, so they was just trying to figure out how the hell to get up out of here and get back over to the cosmic side of things. Like, how do we get, it's like being trapped, either in a maze or like some sort of, you're in a bind and you're trying to figure out how to get out of the damn matrix. And there's so many different ways and distractions to keep you stuck, that it can be very challenging. And that's why we're in a position today where we need our ancestors more than ever, because our ancestors help to keep us connected. We need to be connected to source energy and all that there is so that we can remember who we used to be before we were told to clock in and clock out. And if you don't pay your rent or your mortgage, you're going to get your ass kicked out and be homeless. Like, there was no such thing as that. But if you put people under that type of trauma, then they don't have no choice but to forget, and the last thing they're doing is sitting down around a circle in a fire and letting the elders teach the children in a village raise the family and everybody do their part and we all got food and ain't nobody hungry. Like, we can't live like that today, not the way that things are set up. But that does not mean that we can't elevate our consciousness to a point where many of us are on that frequency. And that's what it means to be a fifth dimensional. And I did a video about that as well recently, because like third density is what I described earlier. This is going to be the place where you're learning your lessons, your soul comes down here, is reincarnated into another body, another family, and you are here to learn, what you screwed up the last time, or you're here to help to elevate and raise a lineage, who may have forgotten their way and needed someone to come inside of that bloodline to be able to assist them. So that's what we're doing. But now that we're here right now, this is the time where things are switching back over, age of the Aquarius, which is already here. And I talked about this year, 2025, which is almost up, being a 9 year of transformation. So pretty much everybody has been going through some form of transformation. You should be different than you were in January. Now, the good part about that is this was kind of like that purge, particularly these last months from October to December. Now, I'm not a big astrology girl. I'm more of a numerology girl, actually, myself. But some people can like tell you exactly what star and planet is in what area. I don't do things that way. I do things based on resonance and what's in my DNA. And I just know. I think I talked about that before. I just know. And so when I speak, either you go look it up, you understand it the way that you understand it, or you listen to it to see if it resonates, with your DNA. So these last few months, October through December, is definitely like the purge, the urge. Think about just these things that are coming up and out of you, these last little final details for some people, where it's like, okay, you got to get rid of this shit. This is not going to make it. And fifth density is too heavy, okay? Because fifth density is about a higher level of consciousness. It's about collective consciousness. It's about coming together, doing things together. It's not on a patriarchal construct. It's not on a hierarchical type of, I'm better than you lower than me. I make more money than you. I got a bigger house than you got. We Fifth density isn't living about like that. Fifth density is about how do we help to elevate the consciousness around the planet so that we can go back to the Atlanteans, okay? And right now you've got a lot of people who are like, okay, I got to do this. And they're feeling the call. They're remembering, they're walking across grid lines. They don't know what's happening. They're connecting with their ancestors and they're elevating. And then you got some people who are very comfortable where they are and they're just going to be left in third density. So a lot of times people think that we're going to be going somewhere different. And I think this is kind of funny because you watch shit on social media and it could be so freaking fake, like TV sometimes. But a lot of times people think that, okay, you're going to get on a spaceship and you're going to go to fifth density and you're going to leave the people down here on Earth. And that's not what it is. We all going to be here together. But some people are going to be experiencing a total different reality than others. And I'm already starting to see that happen. Okay. Like I'm really starting to see that and feel that happen because I spend a lot of time alone, and I explained that before. I'm very protective of my energy. I conserve my energy. I'm very discerning about what I do with my energy, but I still have to interact with people, and it's not necessarily like doing things like going to the grocery store or running inside of the Dollar General. Those things don't bother me because I'm still in my own energy body and in my little bubble. It's when I have to interact with people, and what gets me the most, I think, is work. Because even though I work from home, still I got to come into meetings and stuff like that. We just had a business trip. Oh my God, that drained the hell out of me, by the way. But it was a great example and a way for me to understand that, okay, this is what being fifth density and being in 3D for too long is like. It literally was heavy. It was draining. So I pretty much did what I had to do. I showed up to the little meetings and the events we had to, but then I beat it to my room. And they kept saying like, oh yeah, you want to come eat with us? And I was just like, nah. I was finding all kind of excuses to get out of it. And it just was so they didn't get it. They looked at me like I was not being a team player, or but they didn't realize I got to protect my energy body around you. I can't just be around a whole bunch of people. It's really heavy for the fifth density body. So I survived, and by the time I got home, I was drained. I was drained. I was like, I got to go to sleep and recharge and do my meditation and in the morning and get back on my eating right and all of those different things. So I got a chance to experience, and I was like, yeah, this is what it's like. So fifth density is going to really need to find one another. That's where that collective consciousness that I was talking about comes. Like mind people, they got to find each other because we are going to be impactful in elevating and raise the consciousness on a new earth, y'all. So, in order for us to do that, that just explains and validates everything that I just talked about with the Dogon Tribe, with the cosmic technology, with the sacred geometry, the pyramids, the mounds. All of that stuff lets you know that it was real because we're going back to that. And so now we're going back from a place of a much, much lower consciousness and frequency on the planet, as a result of a lot of what I just described, the going to work, the patriarchal construct, and with that comes a whole myriad of issues with it. You've got racism, you got feminism, you got crime, you got hungry children, you got people that are sick all over the place. We're getting poisoned with food. Like something is working in overtime to make sure we're the opposite of where our ancestors had the planet. You know what I'm saying? And so that's why another reason why I work specifically with Afro Indigenous people, because this is what our ancestors were doing. Now some other beings ancestors was doing different stuff, and that's how we end up getting into stuff like we start talking about the Anunnaki and all of that. And I think there was another episode, so be sure to check that out with a guest that I had. And this is another reason that I always talk about a spiritual war. Okay. I also experienced that this week. So when I'm talking about a spiritual war, I think a lot of times people think that it's Christians say that a lot. A lot of times Christians will talk about fighting a spiritual war and how the enemy's out to get you and the devil out to get you. And some of the stuff that Christians talk about, they be on but off. They be almost on, but they off based on their understanding and logic of it. And so when I talk about a spiritual war, that's a lot of times what I'm thinking about. Why? Because I'm conscious. I'm conscious all the time. Um, and that's another reason I stay to myself a lot. And so I'm always aware when something's off and there's some sort of an attack, because I recognize that it's not just this third density reality that I'm experiencing. I'm experiencing life as a soul. I'm tapping into my ancient technology that's in my bloodline. So therefore, I'm interacting soul to soul with some people, and some people haven't activated theirs. And that's when I talk about the NPCs, okay, the non-player characters as they call it. And the way that you can think about those, for those who don't know what that is think about an extra in a movie. Okay. So like you're watching the main characters in a movie, they're talking, and then you got all these people in the background, or you got somebody, they're in a store somewhere, and then you got somebody just standing back there that doesn't, like an extra. That's an NPC, except for these people are people who are interactive in your life, but they have not activated any codes. They're not doing anything to elevate their consciousness. And so, therefore, they can be used as a host, okay, like an empty vessel at any time for another entity to drop into them. Okay. So, let's say you're standing here in this light body and you're all activated and conscious, and you standing at work and waiting to get something. Right now, all of a sudden, this person comes beside you and they say something in a passive aggressive manner to try to pull you out of your light, right? And this person may not have a clue what they're doing. They just may be being activated by some sort of an entity. And now, on an energetic level, you've got to defend your light body in a certain way without getting fired. It's kind of interesting, and so I kind of went through that this weekend too, because I saw that they did not like the peace that I had with inside of myself, my ability to be strong and soft at the same time. No need to yell. You're not going to get the reaction out of me that you want. I know how to have boundaries. I know how to say no. Remember, we talked about being an embodied divine feminine. So that's who I am. I'm a sovereign divine feminine. So you're not going to get me to do what you want. I can, I'm not going to be a part of the group think. And that seemed to infuriate them to a certain extent. So they started doing these like obvious, like kind of pick and poke and prod things. And it literally was an energetic war, which they kept losing because I was conscious to what was going on. So things kind of ricocheted off of me and back onto them. And I came back home and I was like, man, that was a spiritual war. No wonder I was damn tired. I was sitting there battling these fools for like 3 days straight. And that was my experience as a fifth density in a third density world. Cause that's how I felt. I felt like I was in a world for like 3 days. And so I probably got off a little bit, but to me, that explains, based on my experience, a lot about science and spirituality and how they're interconnected, okay? And how we actually have access as Afro Indigenous people to these ancient technologies in our DNA. So I said a lot in this episode, but I didn't say nearly as much as I'm going to say in the class, the master class that I'm going to be having once again on Wednesday, November the 19th from 7:30 to 9 p.m. And that's going to be from Sirius to the Soul, the Science of Ancestral Power. We are definitely going to go in on that class. If you've ever been to one of my classes, just know that we take it deep, and it's always interesting because the people that are supposed to be there are always there, and I look forward to you guys' insights and understandings as well. Like I'm open for that as well, and that always makes for a much more interactive class. Okay, so be sure to check that out down in the description. Also, be sure to check out the holistic and spiritual af.com for my classes, consultations, books, all of that. Follow me on social media. And without further ado, y'all, I'm not going to hold y'all up too long. That is the end of this episode. Peace.